Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Hardly Millennial podcast, where we are young, dumb, and full of
opinions.
opinions, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys didn't get too used to Thomas because he had to go back to his home in Vegas.
Oh, I'm so sorry I missed him.
I know, dude. But today I have Kyle with me.
Yay!
And Kyle brought beer.
I brought beer.
So we're just...
What kind of beer, Adam?
Oh, our favorite kind,
Our
Kyle.
favorite kind.
Blue Moon.
Blue Moon.
Cheers. Oh, man. So let me explain to you how today is gone and how tonight is gone. So I literally just came home from work.
Yep.
I text Kyle when I was like 10 minutes away from home. It was like, all right, like, just time to start heading over. So we came over, we hugged, and then I was literally just like, okay, let's save conversation for podcast.
No more talking. Podcast time now.
Because I knew we had to get going on it. So here we are. So we don't have any subject or anything planned for you guys, but we have beer.
But we have beer, and beer always makes the conversation better.
Beer always makes the conversation better. So I guess I'll just start by, how are you, Kyle? How's life been treating you?
It's been good. It's been good. Just been working the old grind, coming home, being dad, staying at home with the wife, trying to get parenting figured out, make sure we know what we're doing.
But how was parenting working out for you?
It's been great, actually. It's been one hell of a blast, you know. It's been crazy watching, my little son grow up and learn things, and just the way he approaches the world is just so fascinating.
Was there anything that changed for you personally when your son was born? I mean, you hear that a lot. I mean, women, it makes more sense because they carry the child for 9 months. But
right.
What is it they say? That a woman becomes a mother when they become pregnant and a man becomes a father when the child is born?
Yeah,
is
basically.
Usually what they say. So, did you personally notice, was there any kind of, change or anything that you noticed within yourself when your son was born?
I mean, it's pretty much almost right away, the second I saw his face for the first time, it just it's that big, just everything hits you.
Really?
It's just kind of oh crap, this is my son. This little baby requires me for his life.
Right.
He will cease to exist on his own.
Right.
And it's just it's this empowering thing. And it's the first thing I've noticed after having a son is there is probably no relationship that is as strong as a parent to a child.
Right.
Because it's that's one thing I've noticed growing up. It's oh yeah, it's you're really close to your family, you have some really close best friends, you get really close to your significant other, your spouse.
Right.
But it's just there's just something totally different when it's oh, this child depends on me.
Right.
What I want isn't as important anymore. It's it kind of, goes down that road of just it's him first. But it's of course, I'm still going to live my life.
Right. Well, and that's always, the constant I hear, with young fathers or just fathers in general is just, when the child is born, all of a sudden, that's it. It's your world is now that child, whether you even mean it to or not. Mm-hmm. And, and I hear a lot of people say too, when they have a kid and they go through those emotions, they have that, that feeling of where they don't understand now the stories of when kids or when parents abandon their child.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
You hear the stories all the time about some young mother leaving their kid in a dumpster.
Yeah.
And shit
or
that.
Horrible, terrible things like that. And that becomes a huge thing too. You don't realize how vulnerable you are until you have that kid.
Really?
It is mind-blowing that it's once you have that kid, you're just oh, right, this entire world can take this child away from me at any time. The universe can just decide no, you don't need that child anymore. We're going to take it, And it's so crazy how it becomes this thing of basically like, especially if you become really attached to your child, because it's like,
Right.
of course, what you just said, there are people that just for some reason are able to overcome that attachment and just totally, abandon their children in
Well,
horrible ways.
isn't that now it's a spectrum for sure, but isn't that what postpartum depression is that women go through?
It absolutely can be. I've seen, and heard of, postpartum manifesting in many different ways, where it could just be a lot of crying, or it could be like, I don't want this child, like, get it away from me, and it like just freaks them out. But it is it is definitely one thing. It's just really weird to like have this child and then feel like, oh, well, I had my heart inside my body and it was protected by my rib cage and, my skin and everything. And now there's my child just sitting there and the whole world can go at it without any protection. I have to
Right.
step in and be the protection.
Right.
So it's just like, it is this vulnerable feeling of just like, oh, well, the world can do whatever it wants to this kid if you let it.
It's like you literally have to man up at that point.
Yeah, you really do.
That's crazy, man. And it's weird, because as somebody, who's not a father, and a lot of, my close friends now, like yourself, are becoming fathers,
Right.
Because I was never, really into kids,
Right.
It's
No,
like,
and I definitely
it's like
not
I
at all
never,
either.
I was always the one where it's like if I ended up going to somebody's house who had kids or something, I was always like, I don't know how to interact with them,
Same.
or like me, I won't, like, till this day, I won't hold babies.
Right. Yeah.
I'll wait until they're older, to where I don't feel like I'm going to break them if I touch them wrong.
Right. No, and that was
But-
absolutely 100% what I was going through up until that point, which is why, like, there was a lot of fear during my wife's pregnancy that, I was going to have an issue being a dad of like, well, I've never cared for children. I've never
Right.
seen kids. It's like, oh, that cute. Anytime I've been around children, it's always just like, oh, okay.
Like, all right, there's a kid.
Get away from me now. I don't know what to do with you. I can't really interact with you. And I'm so fucking terrified that I'm going to do something
Right.
that is going to piss the parent off. And now
Yeah.
I'm just going to have this constant battle with the parent from forever.
Well, I remember specifically when I was younger, there was a incident I had. It wasn't like a bad incident or anything, but I just remember I was hanging out with a friend, and we went over to like her aunt's house or something who had a kid. So this friend of mine was the aunt of this child, right?
Right.
So I remember like while we were over there, she had to go do something, and she handed the child to me. And this was the first time like a child had been handed to me, like
Right.
a baby had been handed to me. And I think I was like maybe 15, 16 at the time. And the minute she handed this child to me, this baby, it just started crying. And I'm just like standing there, just like, I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
Like, do I rock it? Do I just like bounce it up and down a little bit? Like, and I literally just kind of like froze there until somebody
Right.
took this baby from me, and ever since then I was just like, all right,
I'm not
no
doing
interest,
babies.
no interest in this at all.
And it's just like, and of course it's like, that was a big thing too, because it's like, I'm, the oldest in my family. I only have my one younger brother. He hasn't had kids yet. So,
Right.
And it's like, throughout my life, I've never really been around children growing, like babies
Right.
growing up. I've never really seen friends having kids until recently. I didn't have family members that were older than me having kids, so I can see what being around a baby that is family is like.
Right.
So it's just like, no, it's like, it's always, oh, that's somebody else's kid. That's somebody else's kid,
Yeah.
And that's how I always was. It's just like, I don't want to touch your kid. I don't want to hold your kid. Your kid comes up, oh, hey, look at this thing I did. And it's like, oh, that's great. I'm trying to talk to your parent.
Right. Well, and I will say that actually, like, having close friends that have had kids now, out of all of my close friends, there's 3 of you now that have had kids.
Right, yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I will say that has made me more comfortable being around babies and kids and everything. Danny, our friend Danny, being the main one, because she has a kid who's 8 years old now.
Right, yeah.
And and I'll go over to her place and play with her son and everything all the time. And
Right.
and same thing with Vince with his daughter now. His daughter's
Exactly.
a little older now to where like, you know, I'll go over and we'll play together and things like that.
Right.
And I'm sure with your son, it'll be the same thing when
Oh,
he gets
yeah,
a little
yeah.
older. So I definitely have gotten more comfortable now
Right.
because of those things. But man, I do remember at first it was like I always kind of had this thought process of like I didn't even know if I wanted kids because I simply was just like, I don't know if I'd be the best dad.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's what I'm saying. It was a big worry that I had, like, going into this. I'm just like, I've never been great around kids. I'm not somebody that likes babies. You know, I don't like other people's kids. And it's like, it was the same thing being thrown back at me. It's just like, oh, don't worry. It's totally different once it's your kid. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and that's what kept getting thrown. I was just like, yeah, but I don't know because the child isn't here yet.
Yes.
So I don't know. And for me, it was there. It's like, I still will like forever remember the moment that it just like, it hit me like a truck of just like, this is my kid. Everything's going to be different.
Yeah.
So it's just like, cause we had, you know, my son and I'm holding him and taking care of him and I'm having a good time, but I'm still just like, I'm not feeling that connection that a mother does, you know, because it's like, oh, well, it was inside of me for 9 months and now, you know, he's attached to my chest to feed and everything.
Right.
So it's like, it's very, you know, integral into, you know, the mother of how close they are to their child.
Yeah.
So it's like for a father, it's like you kind of have to develop that because it's just like you're not doing that, and like that's why a lot of the hospital and doctors will always say it's like, oh, give the dad skin to skin time. So it's just like, oh, it develops that connection. For me, it's like I will always remember the one point. It was probably a month or two in.
So it didn't really happen to you right away.
Not right away. It was definitely a defining moment. It's like, of course, it's like I loved my son and everything. Right. But it's like I was still looking for that. It's like, where's that connection, that undying love that never going to stop loving you. You are my everything. So it's like I was kind of waiting for that. And I'm like, I'm not sure when that's supposed to come up. It was one like Saturday night where I was in charge of watching him and he was in his crib sleeping. And he ended up waking up and starting to cry. And I was like, okay, well, I got to go get the bottle ready. And I got to go in there because, you know, mom's sleeping and I want her to stay asleep.
Right.
So I go and get the bottle ready. He's crying. He's freaking out because it's dark and he's in his crib by himself. And I walk in there and I set the bottle down and I look over his crib to go grab him. And as soon as he makes eye contact with me, crying stops and a big smile goes over his face. Like he was just so happy just to see my face. I was just like, there it is. That was my moment. I'm like, now I'm attached to this kid forever.
Interesting, because that was I'm glad you explained all that, because that's always kind of been a worry of mine, right, with having kids.
Right.
Is you hear these stories from fathers a lot where, you know, they say Vince is one of them who's told, you know, stories before to where when he first held his daughter, you know, that was basically, just as you said, hit him like a load of, you know, a truck hit him, right? Yeah. But those were always one of those things that just always worried me personally, because I was always just like, well, what if I have a kid and I hold that kid and I don't get that feeling.
And you feel nothing.
Yeah, so like, what does that mean? Like, because I would fucking sulk on that. I would hold that with me. I'd be like, why do I not feel what everybody says
and then
you
the
feel?
next part would be, why did I have this child?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And so that's always been something that's kind of worried me, because I'm like, I mean, I want to feel that way, but at the same time, as you know, you can't always help how you feel.
No, you can't.
So it's like, so it actually makes you feel better when you said like, oh, it took me a couple months.
It absolutely did, because it was just always like, oh, well, you know, mom's at home, mom's taking care of the baby starts crying, mom's there to pick him up, give him food, you know, she's always there, always holding him, everything. It's like, and you know, it's like, it's still this shocking moment of like, oh yeah, it's like, this is my child, you know, and I'm having fun and I'm holding him and I'm taking care of him. But it's like, it was really those moments of being alone with him, being the only one to take care of him, where it's just like, it's like, those are the moments where it really hits of just like, oh yeah, it's like that, this child needs you to survive. And then all of a sudden you see this child and they couldn't be happier. Their existence is, you know, a couple of months on this entire earth, and you are the brightest star in the sky. And it's just like, oh, it's like, it just hits you. It's like, and that's what happened. It's like, that hit me right in the feels. I was just like, oh God, that felt so good. I'm just like, okay, I'm a dad. My child loves me. My child wants me here and everything. And it's just like, yeah. And it's like, and then you get those experiences as it goes on. It's like, oh, watching your child crawl for the first time or say dad for the first time. It's just like, oh, right.
Do you want more kids?
For sure.
Yeah?
Definitely. Yeah. And
do you
it's
want like a big family? Or...
I'm not really much of a big family. I didn't come from a big family. I was one of two. You know, it was just me and my younger brother.
Same here.
So it's just like, that's what I wanted. I wanted the nuclear family, you know, mom, dad, son, daughter. I'm good. I got one of each. I'm good. The wife's like, no, I want 4. So we compromised. got right to the middle, and we're like, okay, we'll go to 3 then.
Right.
So it's just like, I'm like, okay, yeah, that works, because I'm kind of like looking at it. I'm like, I really do want to have a daughter, you know, and have that kind of experience. But then at the same time, I'm like, my son could really use a brother if it works out the way it does. Because I'm like, I want my son to experience what I had. And having a brother is such a very significant experience growing up.
I 100% agree. And it's funny. Because my brother and I were somebody where... You know, we fought a lot growing up, just as brothers
all
do.
The time.
You know, just as brothers do. And then when you're a teenager, as you know, also, you know, you don't want your brother hanging out with you and your friends and things like that.
Because of the age difference. The age difference always plays in. And you're always just like, it's my little brother.
Well, and with my brother, it was, and I can't remember what. Well, let me just ask you, what is the age difference between you and your brother?
3 years.
3. Okay, so I'm about the same. I'm like 2.5 years with Thomas, and it's funny thinking back to those times, because now, like, my brother, Thomas, is like one of the if not the closest person to me. You know, I don't know what I would do without that man.
Right.
You know, so I totally get of like, you want to make sure your kid has that experience.
And I really do think the growing up with a brother and having the competition and the fighting and everything
is important.
Important, and it's what brings you together later in life. Because that's something that me and my brother still talk about to this day. It's just like, it's like, did you really think that after all of the crap we went through as kids that we'd end up this close? I'm just like, you know what? Not at first, but once you start digging into it, it's like, of course we were always going to end up this close.
Yes.
It's like the first thought is like, oh no, it's like the stupid stuff we did to each other, the stupid stuff we fought over, and how it's like all my little brother wanted was my attention and my praise, and all I wanted was some alone time.
Yeah. Well, and that is very funny how that happens. You know, like in my case, you know, it was when I grew up, there were a lot of things I regret also, you know, like there were, you know, my brother who was in gymnastics and stuff like that. I never really wanted anything to do with my little brother. So like, even when he was doing gymnastics and stuff, like I never had an interest going to like any of his meets or things like that, which is stuff that I ended up regretting, you know, getting older, because I very much support, you know, Thomas now in all of his endeavors. I'd like to be there for all these major moments of his.
Right. Yeah,
just as
that makes sense.
Just as I know he'd like to be there for mine. But it is very interesting watching how that all changes, because now we're to the point to where Thomas is my younger brother, but I would argue that I probably look up to Thomas more so than Thomas looks up to me, you know?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think it's really important for brothers specifically to have that kind of camaraderie.
Oh, absolutely. And again, this could just all be opinion based, because both of us grew up the exact same way, being the older brother of two brothers. Yeah, exactly. So it's like we both grew up with the exact same experience. So it's just like, no, I never knew what it was like to grow up with a sister. I didn't know what that was like.
I will say, so me neither, obviously, but and I think because of that, I kind of searched for one, because I have my cousin who lives in Los Angeles,
right? Yeah,
whom I consider the older sister I never had, you know, and she does play that role in my life, I feel. And I do think that it is important to have that. I would almost argue that the best scenario as far as getting well-rounded like siblings is two boys and a girl, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want.
Yeah,
that's what we're hoping for.
Well, and I think that's like a well-rounded thing, like specifically an older sister with like two younger brothers, right? Do you have that older sister to kind of, plus I feel like that always works well with the younger brothers always like trying to get with girls and stuff later on, or trying to date and stuff later on. One thing that I know my brother and I had always struggled with, and we're both very outgoing people, but we're still people where it's like, we don't quite understand how girls think or why girls do the things they do. Right. There are girls that we feel that are out of our league when they're really not out of our league.
Yeah.
Different things like that, to where if I had an older sister who would have been able to enlighten me on things, or I could be able to observe as she's going through her shit when she's getting older, I probably would have been better at, or just had more of an understanding of, a woman's mind, than I currently do.
Yeah, and she could be like, oh no, Adam, go for that.
And even not even talking about like the dating sphere, but even just like little things, like maybe being able to relate or empathize with my mom more on certain things that maybe currently I'm maybe insensitive about or don't understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Simply just because, I'm a man, and I've grown around, another brother with a father, with my mom being the only girl in the house.
Yeah.
So it's like I personally would like 3 kids, and I would hope that would be the outcome. But probably not. I could see myself being somebody who it's like I'm either gonna get 3 boys or 3 girls.
Right.
I don't see myself getting a mix, in there.
And that becomes a big thing too, because my wife is very worried about that outcome happening, because my mother only had 2 kids, both boys. Her mom took 3 boys before she had her first girl.
It's funny, my dad's parents were the opposite. It was 3 girls, and then he was the first boy. And that's why she kept having kids, because she wanted that boy.
Interesting. So it comes down to that, and then of course our first child being a boy, my wife's just like, well, if the next one's a girl, it'll be so nice, because then the last one, I don't even care what it turns out to be. It'll be so nice. But if the second one's a boy, I'm going to be freaking out about the third one, just sitting here going like, oh my God, I hope it's a girl.
Yeah. Were you hoping, and I knew the answer to this when you first found out your wife was pregnant, but I've just forgotten. Did you want a boy for your first kid?
Yes,
or did you want a girl?
I absolutely wanted a boy first. And it was definitely because, growing up, it's like I only had a brother. I didn't really grow up around little girls and watch them age. So it was always like, well, I can relate to my son more. I know what growing up like a little boy is like. It's like I never grew up around a younger sister or anything. So it's like if I get a girl, I'm like, I feel like I'm going to be at a disadvantage being a dad.
Right. Exactly. I almost feel this. I almost feel the same way, but at the same time, I don't know what it is. I really want a daughter.
Yeah.
I really want a girl. Yeah. For at least for the first kid, I would really want a girl.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. It's just a feeling that I have that it will be a girl. I just
knows?
want it. Thomas thinks that he's going to have twins.
Oh, does he?
Thomas is pretty convinced.
Does that run in your family?
So I don't. So it's not like a regular thing that runs in my family, but I do remember my mom telling me once that I think somebody on her side had twins at some point.
Okay.
So it's not out of the question.
Right.
But I don't think twins is like a genetics thing either,
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk, but they do say you're more predisposed to twins if you have twins somewhere in your family. And it's like a perfect example of that. And also what I hear is the old saying is twins skip a generation. which for my cousin, it really did. Because my cousin's father was a set of twins.
Okay.
Then she came, and now her first two kids were a set of twins.
Okay, interesting. So, well, was that the case though? Like going down?
I'm not so sure. Like, I don't really know my cousin's family tree on her dad's
on that
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of course her mom is my aunt, and her mom is my dad's sister. So it's her mom that's in this family. It was her dad that was on the outside of our family.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That also scares me too. I'm like, oh, watch. I'm gonna get a girl pregnant and she's gonna have like fucking quintuplets or some shit like that. I'm gonna have 5 kids. Are there things out there like government aid to like help out families that find themselves in those situations? I've always wondered that.
I think there might be. It's like I haven't personally looked
because
myself.
If you have a wife and you and your wife are trying to have a child, and then you have, and then she gets pregnant, and then you find out there's 5 fucking kids in there brewing, like there has to be some kind of help that's offered out there for those people, right? I mean, because that's a lot of money now you're talking.
Oh, yeah.
You have to buy a new house more than likely,
oh, yeah.
like the fucking diapers.
Uh-huh.
Like,
there has to be some kind of help for that. But it is funny going into that because I know my older stepbrother, my stepdad's kids, he got married, and it was his wife that was talking him into having kids.
Right.
And he ended up finally saying, fine, I'll have 1 kid with you. Got knocked up, had twins.
At least it was twins, At least it's like, okay, twins, whatever. Like, if it was like, oh, wait, we have, triplets or some shit.
But still, it was the whole fact of, like, he had finally come around to the idea of, like, okay, just 1. I will do just 1 kid because, you're my wife and, we've talked about this. I will do 1. I'm not going any further past that. Be happy that you are able to convince me to 1. And she's like, oh, sorry, here's twins.
See, and those are those like situations that just sit there and make me think, like, if there is a God, he has a sense of humor.
Oh, he absolutely has a sense of humor.
Like, for sure, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Kids are crazy, man. So here's a funny story. I don't know if I've told you this or not, but I know I've, but this will be the first time I mentioned this on the podcast. So one thing I've always said, going back to how I do really want a daughter at some point in my life, right?
Right.
And, and growing up, we've all had the points where we sit there and think like, oh, if I had a son, what would I name him? If I had a daughter, what would I name her, right? And I always had this name stuck in my head of what I would name my daughter, and I'm very attached to it, so much so to where, like, if my future wife or the future mother of this child, like I would almost argue, I really want to name the child this, regardless of like what she wants to name the child. And that was Samantha Elizabeth Hansen, right?
Well, you realize by saying that, if 10 years down the road you have this child, now the internet knows about it.
That's true. That's very true.
You can't be putting out those names. Now it's out there.
Oh my gosh, that's true. Well, don't you fucking dare, people.
You leave my daughter alone.
But what's funny though about that is I remember a few years ago, I was sitting down with my parents, and the conversation of like what I would possibly name future kids just came up, right?
Right.
And I remember mentioning that to them, and both my parents started laughing, especially my mom. And, of course, I'm like, what the fuck's so funny? And my mom tells me, she goes, Adam, if you were a girl, your name was going to be Samantha Elizabeth Hansen.
Aww.
And she goes, the reason, and so I had a dog growing up, right? That my parents got when I was like a toddler, and they ended up naming the dog Sam. And the reason why they did that was because they didn't get the daughter to name Samantha.
That's funny.
So, yeah, creepy though, huh? Because I didn't know that information before my parents told me.
It's kind of like did it ever get brought up, or did you just really like the name of your dog? Or...
Well, that was yeah, right. Well, that was definitely something I had to like wonder about, because obviously the first thing that comes to my mind is like, okay, well, I feel like my mom had to have mentioned this to me at some point, right? It just got stuck in my head. But no, dude, I just always thought that name just had a really nice ring to it, you know, and I thought, like, it almost sounds like a movie star, right?
Right, yeah. One that would use all three names.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a Jennifer Love Hewitt kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's always what I would name him. Would you ever, how do you feel about some of the, like, more nuanced names that are coming out? Do you see it more so with celebrities? Definitely. But like, you know, how like Kim Kardashian named her daughter North, or like I think Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes have a daughter named Apple. I could be wrong. That could be Gwyneth Paltrow. But one of the celebrities. There's a little girl named Apple out there.
Right. No, and it's just like, because I also watched the most recent Netflix special for Kevin Hart. And he was saying about that too. It's like, oh, you know, we're having another kid right now. It's like, so they have like their first son that's Hendrix. That's his first name. And the newest one, again, don't remember, but it's something off like Kazay or something, or Kazan or something. Yeah, again, I'd have to look it up, because it's like, he said it in the special, but it's still like, why do celebrities feel the need to come up with these very strange, very unique names for their children?
Well, I almost feel like, though, that is just kind of, I feel like that's how it always happens in history. I feel like that's just natural progression of how names happen, because you look back at some of the like names that people were called back in the day, and like Aristotle. Right? Oh, yeah, who names their kid Aristotle anymore?
Or what, like Copernicus?
yeah, like Copernicus, like anything like that. Well, I feel like the way that those names transformed was the celebrities of those times were naming their kids, you know, like back then what was considered outlandish things,
right?
And then it just kind of transformed to what we have now.
And it's like, because I'm not gonna lie, it's like, I think those old timey names do kind of hold up, because, you know, it's like the whole thought is like, you know, the hope is 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. But if we do end up the route of 3 boys, it's like one name I've always really liked, which of course is still under discussion, which is why I'm bringing it up, because I don't know if I'm going to get this name. So I'll throw it out there. But I've always really liked the name Sebastian.
Really?
Yeah. And it's just like, I know it's like, especially our generation, it's like there's a bunch of different things that come up. It's like mostly the crab from Little Mermaid. Right. So it's of course it's hard not to go there. But it's just like, but outside of that, like going into music and everything, it's like, oh, well, Sebastian Bach and everything. And
right.
So it's like, yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, I always liked the name Sebastian. So it's like, it would be really interesting to, you know, see that play out. But again, you know, gotta run that one through the wife.
Is there a girl name that you're like, that like you're very specific to, or
well, I don't know, it's like, it's kind of gone back and forth. It's like, initially I was kind of thinking I really wanted the name Jean.
Okay.
And it's like, I really like that name, but again, not really something that went past the wife. And because, of course, it's like, yeah, and that would probably just be me going super nerdy, because it's like, that's just totally going to X-Men. That's totally just naming her after Jean Grey.
You want to know what's funny, though? The first name that I thought of, or the first character that I thought of when you said Jean, was Jean from Bob's Burgers.
Oh,
that was the first thing that came to my mind. I knew a Jean at one point when I was younger, but blonde kid, blue eyes.
Oh.
But only Jean I've ever known in my entire life.
Interesting.
Boy or a girl, actually. Only Jean I ever know in my entire life. But no, dude, names are crazy. Because,
They are.
Because then you, like, I mean, that's what you're known for the rest of your life, you know?
Absolutely.
And I don't know, as far as like weirder names go, like off the wall names, there was a name that I heard for for a girl. It was actually in a movie. And the movie I'm going to say is going to sound really funny, you know, and if I ever have a daughter named this, as she listens back to this, she's going to fucking slap me or something. But have you ever heard of the movie Repo the Genetic Opera?
Oh, of course. You're the one that turned me on to that.
Okay, yeah.
Because, of course, it's like, yeah, which, of course, is a fantastic rock musical.
Little rock opera, yeah.
Yeah, which I have, like, totally gone gaga over. Just musicals.
The main girl in there, played by Alexa Vega.
Oh, yeah.
Her character's name is Shiloh.
Yes.
And ever since I saw that movie, regardless of what the movie is, the subject matter of the movie, after I heard that, I was like, I've always felt that was a really pretty name for a girl.
Really nice name.
You know, like the first girl gets the Samantha Elizabeth, but I'm like, I feel like I would name a girl Shiloh. I really would.
So hi, Shiloh.
Hi, Shiloh.
If you're listening to this later, Dad says hi and that he loves you.
It's true though. Like, I don't know, but that's probably like as off the wall as I get as far as names go.
It definitely did come down to it. It's like I didn't have a whole bunch of names I was waiting for. My wife was really the one that had the names planned.
Right.
She was going into this like, oh no, I know like what my first son and what my first daughter is going to be named.
See, that's how my mom was with me. Definitely was because I've obviously asked her this question before of like, you know, like were there other names that you were, you know, like, you know, plotting or trying to think of whatever it was, and she was like, nope, always knew it was Adam. Always liked Adam. You're going to be Adam. Like, if I was a boy, obviously. If I was a girl, it was going to be the Samantha.
So was it the biblical context that drew her out?
You know, I don't know. Both my parents are very religious.
Right.
So it's very possible that it could have been from the biblical sense. But when my mom has told me this story before, that was never like part of the story. It was never like, well, I really like the name Adam from the Bible. It was just, I like the name Adam.
Right.
You know, and I think it's a great name because I love my name. Yeah, I think Adam's a fucking awesome name.
It's a great name.
Thank you. But no, I don't. I mean, it very well could be because I know my mom definitely grew up like Catholic,
right?
Definitely grew up more religious than my dad did. So I mean, it very well could have been from that, but I don't think that was like what it's
right.
From.
And it's like I kind of asked that because it's like my wife's family, you know, grew up very Mormon. And so they
I did not know that.
Yes, grew up very Mormon. And so a lot of...
They're not still Mormon, though, right?
No.
Okay. I was going to say, because like I went to your wedding, and there was definitely nothing Mormon about that wedding.
I believe her father's side still does a lot of the Mormon stuff. You know, it's still very into that. But yeah, her mom's side kind of dropped out of that. But it's, you know, when they were having kids, you know, they were still very Mormon, and so like almost all of their kids' name have some kind of biblical context. You know, their names are somewhere in the Bible, all of their kids.
Do you plan, and if this is too personal of a question, feel free to turn it down.
Can I just reach across the table and slap?
Yeah, just follow your heart, you know, I just want you to be happy. But like, do you guys plan on raising your kids with religion at all?
Honestly, no.
No? I was going to say, because like, I know you personally aren't really religious, but I wasn't sure.
I didn't grow up very religious either. So.
Right, but I wasn't sure about your wife or if that was something that maybe you guys wanted to like delve into.
No, yeah, because it's like for her growing up, religion was very forced. So it kind of left her a very bad taste in her mouth. So when mom's side of the family kind of stopped doing that, it was just like, oh... Finally.
Okay.
So yeah. So she's very not pushing the religion card. I'm very not pushing the religion card. And it's like, it is really funny because it's like, that's always kind of been my take on religion. It's like, because my mom, like when me and my brother were growing up, she wanted us to know what it is and maybe try it out or whatever. Because it's like, I guess because my grandmother, you know, my mom's mom, she is very religious, and she pushed a lot of religion on my mother.
Right.
So, after my mother had kids, it was still a lot of push from grandma of like, oh, they should be, going to Sunday school. They should be, doing this and stuff.
Right.
So that kind of came up, and so we did an occasional like, oh, you go to the church, do the kids stuff while, all the adults are listening to the preacher.
You did that, or you guys are currently doing that?
No. We did that when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that, when I was really young. And so that was like the first thing. So even at a very young age, I was able to pick out almost immediately from religion of like, a lot of this feels forced. A lot of this feels forced because nobody outside of this church talks this way.
True.
So it's like, that was the first thing that came across. I'm like, this feels really weird.
What religion were you like raised as?
Christian.
Oh, Christian. Okay.
Yeah, just very basic. So it just kind of came off that way. It's like going to Sunday school or whatever, just going and hanging out with all the other kids and watching Veggie Tales and stuff like that.
I remember Veggie Tales.
Yeah, Veggie Tales was always a big one during those times. And then it's like, oh, we take a break and now we're gonna read a prayer. And then it'd be like, oh yeah, so last Sunday, I was out riding my bike and everything, and then I tripped, but good thing I had pants on or whatever, so I didn't scrape my knee. It's like, good thing Jesus was watching out for me. I'm like, who talks like that? Who talks like that outside of this church?
Right.
And it's like, that's why immediately religion just left a very bad taste in my mouth.
I agree with that, and those are things that bother me too. There was one time, this actually just happened a couple weeks ago, where one of my coworkers at work, her best friend is a Mormon girl who actually just came back from her mission.
Oh, okay.
And because of where she was placed for her mission, she had to learn Mandarin Chinese.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Weirdest thing, this I got to meet this girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, like the most Aryan looking fucking girl you can meet.
Very Caucasian, very American.
Fluent Mandarin Chinese.
Yeah.
Weirdest fucking thing to watch.
Weird. So weird.
And but I asked her, I was like, how did you learn? Because she learned it in because for those who don't know, like a Mormon mission is 2 years.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So she learned it in such a short amount of time. And Mandarin Chinese is supposed to be one of the, if not the hardest language to learn.
Yeah. No, it's definitely up there because it's like, I know a lot of other cultures will say English is almost impossible to master.
English is up there also, but I think Mandarin
Mandarin's really bad. And I know Japanese is really bad
There's another one too, yeah. And they were, I think Finnish is actually the like highest ranking one to learn. Yeah. But I had asked her, like, how did you learn Mandarin Chinese so fast? And, she goes like, she said something like hard work, teachers, and prayer. And I was like, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah. I think you're passing away a lot of the credit, which is always what's so funny, because it's like, I've heard, it's like, I've been throughout the years, and it's like, I've seen what sermons given at various churches and stuff. And it's like, it's really funny because I hear a lot of the philosophy and I'm like, that sounds fantastic. And then you start saying God and Jesus, and I'm like, okay, again, I don't have a problem with the religion aspect. Be whatever you want to be. Everybody's free to do what they want to do. It just feels like, it's like, I hate to say this too, because it does kind of come off bad. It's like, it feels like it taints it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I don't like to say that, because it's like, I don't have a problem with religion. It's not my thing. It's not what I invested in. It's not what I've put my time in. And then it just feels like, well, of course, it's like, it's probably your fault for going to the church. And then if people are talking about Jesus and God and you're at a church, You have no right to complain.
Yeah. Well, the issue that like my brother and I always had with religion, and my brother and I was a little different than a lot of people because we grew up Catholic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And anybody who grows up Catholic knows it's very different than like Christianity, and in regard like the beliefs are much more set in stone.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
You know? And so one thing now. Just disclosure here. Like, I love my parents very much. I don't blame them at all for this. This is just the way they were raised. This is their beliefs, and everyone's allowed to have their beliefs. And of course, I'm going to be raised with those beliefs. But like one thing my brother and I always had issues with once we got older and we were able to kind of look back at that kind of stuff was it was always kind of this, if you do don't do bad things because then you'll go to hell. Right?
Yes.
And I always hated that. It's like, I want my kids to not do bad things because it's wrong to do.
Yeah, for morality's sake.
Not because of this fear that you're going to go to hell if you do bad things.
Yeah, because then what's the reasoning? Why is it bad? Oh, it's just bad because hell. Well, that doesn't really allow me to grow and learn and have a more open mind.
Well, and don't get me wrong, my brother and I ended up being very well-rounded people.
Absolutely.
Growing up Catholic.
I don't think that Catholic, Christianity, Mormon, or any of them, corrupt to the core children. It's like, I think you could still be raised perfectly fine in any religion. Right. I think, you could turn out better than somebody that isn't raised in religion.
Yes.
So it's like, I don't think the religion has an effect on your capabilities or your potential.
Right.
I don't think that whatsoever. So it just really becomes, it's like kind of just another thing of like, I don't like the force version of it. I don't like it. Oh, well, all of this is because of Jesus. It's just like, yeah, see, but it's like, I don't have those beliefs, and if I did have a belief, I didn't come to you and say, oh, well, the only reason you're doing so well in your life is because of this, this various, person
yes.
or whatever, or, even if you were 100% atheist and used science as a religion of just like,
right.
Oh, well, science is the only reason you got to where you are, and genetics are the only reason. It's like, okay, so I'm not free, I don't have a choice. It's just
right,
and it's like I know it was just something that I noticed growing up, and it was just something that it's like I just couldn't ever get behind. It's just, oh, okay, yeah, we're having a good conversation, and everything seems great, and this is how everybody else talks, and then oh, Jesus, this, God, that, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, it feels like if it is so normal and it's so accepted, why do you have to restrain yourself from saying Jesus and God every other word in other company outside of the church?
Yes.
Outside of the church. It's like, and I know there are plenty of very religious people that will continue to talk about Jesus and God outside of church and just throw his name around constantly of like, oh, he's fantastic. He does everything for us. But then again, I know a lot of people that go to church and talk about Jesus one day a week. Yes. And then they never say his name for the other 6 days of the week.
Well, and speaking of church, that was also another issue I had as I got older and was able to look back on stuff in retrospect, to where I was just like, I never understood, because growing up, as a kid, I hated going to church.
Oh, yeah.
I hated Sundays because I knew we had to go to church, and I have to sit there for an hour. This little fucking kid with tons of energy have to sit there for an hour and listen to some old guy talk about things that are going over my head at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why I do appreciate the churches going and investing in the kids' time by having a Sunday school for the kids where they can hang out with other people their age.
And I think that's where Christianity got it right. Let me rephrase. I think that's where people who are Christian got it right. And Catholics got it wrong. Because one thing I even remember my parents always kind of complaining about growing up was there was never really something offered for the kids. Now, my brother and I did go to like a religious kind of school thing. So it was like every Wednesday and Sunday night we went to the church where it was Bible school, basically. You went there, you talked about God for an hour, right? And I got in trouble there. Like I remember I had to one time, I was always the class clown, and when I was in Bible school, that was no different.
Right.
And I remember at one point, I had to write 100 times. I had to write 100 lines saying, I will not like speak out in class. I will not speak out in class. I had to write that 100 fucking times. And
and that's also
that doesn't make me like religion any better.
And it's real funny too to go off on a side tangent just on that. You realize that it's like hearing about kids in school now and everything too. That's not a punishment that happens anymore.
That's true. Yeah,
it is something that the next generation, Generation Z, is like just completely unaware of like sitting down and writing the same sentence 100 or 200 times.
Well, to be fair, I never had to do that in regular school.
That's true. I think I might have had to do it one time when I got detention, but it's like I think it's real funny because it's like if you ever had to do that, all the tricks.
Yes.
Because one, every sentence starts with I, so you just start by drawing a line all the way down the paper, and then you just mark all the I's all the way up. And then you can do the same thing. It's like, I know, well, K has a line, so you just draw another line all the way down.
Right.
Like, you try to make it as easy as possible.
Right.
But again...
It was, I don't know, religion to me is like, I don't have quite an issue with kids being raised with religion simply because like my brother and I, we're two people who were, raised with religion. And like I said, we're very well-rounded people. Mm-hmm. We're definitely not as religious as my parents would like us to be by far. But like one thing I always have issue with is like the stories of the Bible, right? Because one, the Bible is written by men, and two, I always look at the stories in any religion as like the game of telephone, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's something happened. That person who witnessed that thing happening told somebody, then that person told somebody, then that person told somebody. So you don't think after like 2,000 years that the story probably got skewed a little bit?
Yeah, and it's like, and I do hate to bring it up, it's like, because I did hear somebody kind of hit on this too that also isn't very religious whatsoever, of like, isn't it also kind of weird that everything that's in the Bible really just applies for the time the Bible was written?
Right.
Like, and it was a pretty good joke that I heard at the time. It's just like, why isn't there anything in the Bible? It's just like, even just one thing that made no sense to the people at that time, but makes sense to us now. Like, hey, I know you guys don't know what this means, but, thou shalt really not steal thy neighbor's Wi-Fi. I know you don't know what that means yet, but that will be very important in a couple thousand years.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's the thing with, people who are religious, I think would just argue that it's a very broad kind of sense of it, right?
Oh, and I know a lot of the passages try to be very vague on what they're trying to say so they can reach out as...
Right.
Because it's like, and it's like, again... Plenty of religious people can correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to, comment down below. I have no problem. It's like, I'll talk to people, it's like, I don't have a problem. I like having open-ended discussions, even about things like religion that everybody says, that's a taboo topic. You should never talk about that because you're going to start huge, explosive arguments.
Right.
So, again, feel free. I will have a conversation with you.
Well, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that it just kind of comes down to, with religion, it's like it's kind of like the Bible is your morality. You are not allowed to decide your morality for yourself. This book decides it for you.
Correct.
Which has kind of been my experience. Again, never read the Bible, don't know it, don't know a lot of the passages.
Right.
So, but it does kind of give that thing. It was just like, okay, well, if we were supposed to be given free will, which again, don't know if we were according to the Bible, But if we were, why is our morality decided for us? Why is our morality not something we decide?
Well, I would argue, because I have read the Bible. Don't get me wrong, it's been years.
Right.
But I have read the Bible. And the thing is, our morality isn't decided for us.
Okay.
Our morality is very much something that we choose, because there is free will. That,
right. And I guess kind of what I was going off of is throwing back to what you said. If you're bad, you go to hell. And there is a list, or maybe not a per se list, but an unwritten book of what is and isn't bad.
Well, but remember also that is based off of Catholicism, which is a branch of Christianity.
Oh, okay.
So the kind of the big difference with Catholicism compared to like the Christianity or religions such as like Lutheran or Methodist or just Christian, right?
Right.
Is Catholicism takes the Bible very literally.
Okay.
That's the big difference between the other ones. Whereas like Christianity, the other branches of Christianity kind of take it as a set of guidelines, right? So a perfect example of this is a big argument in regards to the Bible is being gay, right? So there is a line in the Bible that, and I'm not going to get this 100% right, but it says something along the lines of like thou shalt not lie with another man. This says something like specifically uses the word it's an abomination, correct? Right. So if you're Catholic, that's looked at as it's an abomination. Don't fucking do it.
Right.
God doesn't
very
want you to
literal.
do it.
Very
I
literal.
actually just listened to a podcast with Ben Shapiro. And those out there who don't know, Ben Shapiro is just he's a Orthodox Jew, but he's a big conservative, right? He's considered alt-right to a lot of people. But this particular podcast was not about politics; it was about his religion and his beliefs. And he is somebody who believes that even if you have the tendency to be attracted to men and want to be with men, it is your duty, as told by God, to fight those
because
urges.
Isn't those urges are brought upon by Satan?
That wasn't the argument for this, but all he was saying was if you have that tendency, he thinks that you should fight against them and only be with a woman, right?
And I think we do see that in a lot of other religions too, because I know that's something that's even like kind of hit on with Mormonism.
Mormonism too, but before you go any further, the point I wanted to make though is I happened to live with somebody who's very religious, who's been on this podcast very much, and that is Matthew.
Love Matthew. Again, another perfect example of somebody who's very religious that I'm fine with.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I think he's great.
Well, yeah, and I do too. And I've had a lot of conversations with Matthew in regards to his beliefs because, and don't get me wrong, I do think a lot of the religious beliefs are bullshit, and I think a lot of Matthew's beliefs are bullshit also.
Hey, still love you, Matthew.
But what I do appreciate about Matthew's interpretations of the Bible are like, and this is something that Christianity kind of allows you to do that Catholicism does not, is I asked Matthew in regards to like the abomination thing, because as you know, we live with a gay man, him and I both.
Right, absolutely.
And the way that Matthew described it that I found very interesting, and I think would be even more true if there is a God and if God did hand down these words for the Bible, is he said abomination did not mean the same thing now that it means back then.
Right.
All it was saying is that it's weird. That's Matthew's interpretation.
Interesting.
All God was saying is there's going to be gay people, it's going to be fucking weird.
Right.
You know? And those are the things that always interest me with the Bible. As somebody who maybe isn't a hardcore believer, I look at the Bible and the stories from those kind of religions the same way as I look at people who are really into like Greek mythology, right?
Okay.
I really enjoy the stories. I really enjoy movies that have their own interpretations of what the devil is or what God is, especially when you get to see those visuals of how they think. Like, if you were to meet the devil, what would it be like?
Yeah.
If you were to meet God, what would he look like, you know?
Yeah.
But it's the interpretations that matter, and how you decide to what's the word I'm looking for? How you decide to preach those interpretations onto other people. One thing I do really appreciate about Matthew is Matthew won't talk about his beliefs unless he's asked about it, you know?
Again, another fantastic
Matthew
point.
isn't somebody who, like, if I asked him, how did you learn Mandarin Chinese? His answer's not going to be, I prayed, you know? Even if that is how he feels.
Sure, absolutely.
But I do feel like when you say things like that, that's still kind of pushing, like, indirectly pushing your belief.
Yeah, and that was always my take from being in Sunday school and everything of like, it always feels really pushed. Like, I'm already here. I'm already in the church. Do you need to keep pushing? Mm-hmm. And again, it's like, but then again, it's like that was my version as a kid.
Yeah.
And it was never like, oh, you know, this is just how they talk. This is how they are. This is, you know, this is the way they like to live their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one thing I always tell people too when I have the conversation about religion, especially with religious people, and it's sad that I have to do this, but like, I am somebody to where if somebody asks me, Adam, do you believe in God? I tell them no. But here's the thing. That's a lie, because I do believe in God. But the reason why I feel compelled to tell these people no is because...
You don't believe in their God?
It's not... Well, yes and no. So when they ask me, do you believe in God? The reason why I feel compelled to say no is because I feel when they hear the term God... They hear the name God,
totally different picture.
They're thinking of a bearded man in the sky that, you know, that created man in his image, whatever it is.
Right, yeah.
That is not, this is the yes or no part, that is not my God.
Yeah.
I do believe in God. I do believe there is a singularity that exists in existence, that we are the result of its creation.
And see, it's like I can see that, and it's like that's where a lot of people, and it's like it's really sad because it's like the terminology for that would be agnostic, right?
Right, yeah.
And then yet I feel like a lot of people that have faith or whatever always look at as agnostics as the easy way out.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, I think agnostic is just a way of saying, I believe that there's something more out there, but I'm not going to sit there and try to understand what that something is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mistake with a lot of religion. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty confident that in the Bible somewhere... there's even a line in there or a passage that even says that it's like a sin to even try to fathom what God is.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And so it's like, and when you have this book that's written by men, and I'm not saying Jesus wasn't real. I'm not saying that the stories in the Bible did or did not happen. All I'm saying is me as Adam, as just this average 27-year-old male trying to get through life, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
But I think it's ignorant to assume that there's something more not out there.
Yes.
You know?
And that is the perfect description I would give as well. Because I believe pretty much the same kind of concept of there has to be something more that we're just not aware of. But again, I'm not going to put a label or a name tag on it.
Right.
So it's just like, I don't like giving the God figure a name and an identity when it's just like, I don't know what it is. And I feel comfortable in the fact that I don't know. Yes. I feel very comfortable that I don't know what that superior existence is.
And the thing is, if there is a God, I don't think he expects us to know.
And I actually heard somebody put it very well of like, oh, how can you believe that a God exists? How can you believe in religion or whatever? It's just like, look at how everything goes. It's like, when you die, you just go back into the earth and everything, and that's it. There's no way to prove that some being exists or whatever. It's like we're all just a compilation of atoms and everything put together. So it's just like, how could you possibly believe that, something so crazy and spectacular that you can't explain exists? And he just put a very simple point of, well, how are you going to tell me that out of all of this space, these rocks combined together in the perfect zone in front of a star, and all of a sudden it started growing life on it that would eventually evolve into humans, and all of that was just, oops, an accident? What?
Well, the thing is, I would almost disagree with that explanation, because I do believe that we are an accident as far as like the universe is concerned and everything. It's funny. We actually, I don't know if you've listened to the past few podcasts from the past few days, but Thomas and I actually talked about that. Do you remember? And I was saying, there, with all the trillions of planets that are out there and everything, we might be 0.0000001%, but that 0.00001%, it could still be, billions of planets.
Right. No, and that's actually fantastic too, because that kind of rolls into one of my other points that, I even commented on that video as well. That brings up the Fermi paradox.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yes, yeah. Because that is exactly what the Fermi paradox is. The paradox is that with all of these stars and planets and everything out there, now that we know planets are not a weird, strange occurrence, that just about every single star in the galaxy
has at least one or two,
and that out of all of those, that's what they were saying, is basically, even if we said that 0.1% of all the stars in existence had a planet in the Earth zone that could make habitable life, we would still have 200,000 planets in existence.
Yes.
That could form habitable life.
Yes.
And not only could they form habitable life, they could have formed habitable life 2 billion years before the Earth did.
Yes.
And you're telling me none of them have shown any signs of life. That's the paradox, is if there is so much evidence, why have we not seen anything?
Well, the argument is that we possibly have.
Possibly have.
Because we have found a lot of exoplanets that we know are Earth-like.
Right, but then again, that also comes into my theory too. And again, there's plenty of great videos out there on YouTube that will kind of show you like the thought behind of why we haven't come across life. Right. And it's like, it's hard for me to believe that, Earth came across life and we were the superior being. We were able to stop the alien from coming down to Earth and, interacting with us. You're telling me that life has existed almost 1 billion years longer than human life, and we were able to, capture an alien? What?
Yeah, those are definitely some of the issues I have. Well, and especially when you get into like the thought process of one semi-recently new information that we have found is we used to think that light was the fastest thing in the universe, right? Well, we know that's not true now.
Right, because we know it's tachyons?
Tachyons is one theory. Another one, though, is like dark matter and dark energy.
Yes, dark matter. And then that's where you really start getting into quantum physics and everything, too.
Yeah.
I love quantum physics.
Which we could get into another day, because that's a whole podcast in itself. But I do love that stuff, too. I've read up a lot about that stuff. But when it comes down to that kind of stuff, it's like, just as you said, we know that even if we could travel at the speed of light, right? Let's say we were able to invent a ship that could travel at the speed of light, it would still be impossible to reach. Ooh, burp.
Hey.
Excuse me. It would still be impossible to reach these other galaxies.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're moving away from us.
Yeah, because of how Earth expands. And that's what they said. Our observable galaxy contains up to 9 billion stars, what we can observe from where we are. which
Yes.
is even still in itself crazy to think about.
Yes.
But it was also the fact that our local cluster, which contains the Milky Way galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, and
I think
50
like 5 others.
yeah,
or
some
like
kind
that,
of number
yeah.
of other galaxies. It's like that's our local cluster.
Uh-huh.
And we are one local cluster of thousands.
Yes.
And in order to travel from our local cluster out into the vacuum emptiness of space where not even stars exist, over to the next
Yes.
local cluster, they said even traveling at the speed of light would take over 1 billion years before you could even get close to the next local
Exactly.
cluster. And it's just like, and it's so crazy. And it's like, yeah, and it's exactly that reason, because space is always expanding. And just the thought of like, oh, that's just what we can observe. There is 100% more than likely even more that we can't observe.
Yes.
And so it's like, yes, that's where it gets really crazy for me to think about, alien life and like that too, of like, oh no, it's like we're aware of it. And it's like, again, not to harp on Thomas's points and everything, because it's like I really liked what he had to say, and it's like I really wanted to have a conversation with him about that too.
Right.
Which sometime in the future, Thomas, we'll get together and we'll have a good conversation. But it does kind of feel like if there is a superior intelligence to us on Earth, that they would it's like that we would think they would probably take the Star Trek route.
Right.
That we're still too underdeveloped.
Yes.
That it wouldn't be worth making contact with us because it would create mass hysteria, which is pretty much what Thomas said too, of why it's being hidden is because of mass hysteria. But I also think that we have life out there that is way more superior than us, that is watching us, that is taking a look at us and just like, no, they're not ready. They're not ready for prime time yet.
Well, and if there is other life out there that's that intelligent, I don't even think they look at us and go, they're not ready. I think they look at us and go, oh, look at these microorganisms.
Right, yeah, we're so inferior. Oh, look, they still have corporeal bodies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a great example of that, and one of my favorite movies is the movie Interstellar.
Oh yes, I know. I know how much you love that.
And have you seen that movie
yes.
yet? Okay,
it took me 2 watches before I really kind of grasped
grasped the concept of it. But at the end, and this is gonna be a spoiler, but the movie's been out for years, so
big old spoiler.
So get the fuck out.
Well, I mean, if you've lasted this long, I'm surprised by you anyway. We've gone quite a bit over anyways. Yes. But let's keep going.
We're
not done.
Do it. I still got like half of my second beer left. Let's do it. But they stated in the end of that, Matthew McConaughey's character finds himself in this tesseract, right?
Yeah.
And for those who don't know what a tesseract is a fourth dimensional cube. And he finds himself in this tesseract, and he even says in there, he goes, the aliens didn't send me here. We sent me here. Humans sent me here. Just humans that have evolved past the point of third and fourth dimension. Because what do you say? They created this this fifth dimensional space in a fourth dimensional cube that could be observed in a third dimensional space, so that he could understand it.
Yeah, like they made it specifically so he could understand it and to get a real grasp of it. Right. But then it's like, which does just end up with a lot of leading questions of why him?
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, which is of course those were like kind of my initial problems with the movie at first. But then having a second watch of like, okay, no, it's like if you focus more on the concepts, it's like it's really a crazy movie, and just to really get a good look, because it's like, of course, it's like you're trying to put a physical picture over something we can't even possibly comprehend, which is like why you have all that strange imagery at the end of the movie, because it's just like, this is the best kind of imagery we could give to a tesseract.
Right.
You couldn't even possibly grasp what that would look like, so we're just going to kind of do it. And I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it was just really crazy to see the idea of time as a dimension.
Yes, exactly. And that's what they believe.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what they believe. And I believe that too. I believe time is the fourth dimension. That once we get to the next dimension, it will be time is just a point on a graph.
Yes.
And the way you can just go from point A to point B on a two-dimensional graph, you'll be able to go from 1898 to 30,586 just by a hop and a skip, because
Right.
time is just a point.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I think too, in regards to like religion and like what happens when we die, for example, right? So we know that we humans are made up of energy. You know, as Neil deGrasse Tyson has famously
Absolutely.
said, we're made of star stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, and we know that matter cannot be that matter is finite, right?
Yes.
So we know that there's a finite number of matter. It can change, it can fuse, but you cannot change the amount of matter there is.
And
now,
yeah, because energy is the same way. Energy cannot be destroyed or created. It just, or what is it?
I think you have that right. I think energy
And
cannot
it's
be
like it can
destro-
only continue to exist because it's like even when
Yes.
energy is used, it is dissipated as heat,
Yes,
which is like one of the first laws of thermodynamics.
Yes, exactly. So like one theory that Justin and I have talked about a lot in regards to like what happens when you die is we know that our brains have DMT in there, right?
Yes.
And we know that when you die, DMT gets released.
Yes.
And those out there who have done any kind of psychedelic in their life kind of knows what it's like to teeter on those kind of different, variations. And so one thing that we believe that could be after you die is you basically create your own heaven.
I could
right?
totally see that.
So-
so does it become like this process of kind of going the Inception route of, since you're in your own head, time moves at a much slower time?
Well, the time's non-existent, right?
Okay.
Time's a point on a graph.
But yet your brain still exists in your body, and at some point oxygen will stop going to it and it will cease to move and exist.
On a third dimensional plane.
Sure.
But so now you get to a point where you're able to exist on a fourth dimensional plane.
So are we talking on your way to death or after all of that's done?
After death.
After death.
So I think
all your heart stopped beating, the electricity in your brain has ceased.
Well, look at it this way. So if we're thinking about things, so by the way, guys, I'm a little tipsy. I've had some drinks in me, so bear with me here.
Which is also why this is going on.
Which is also why this is going on longer.
Longest podcast on the channel.
But so bear with me here. So I believe that all of us existed at one point. This is kind of gonna be a pun, but at one point existed as just that, a point.
Okay.
Right? So then something happened to where we're no longer a point.
We're a line.
We're a line, right? However you want to interpret that,
I think I
go
know where
for
you're
it,
going
right?
with this. I
Okay.
think I know where you're going with this.
so then from the line, you are birthed into a third dimension,
Yeah.
right? So now we are
Well,
third.
Yeah, because it would be aligned to a shape to...
Yeah, so we become a shape, right?
Yeah, so now we have two dimensions.
Now we have, and
And
now
now we become life and we enter the third dimension.
third dimension. So I think death is just the natural progression
Is the door.
from third to fourth. And then once you enter into that existence, that fourth dimensional existence, there's something else that happens. We call it death in the third dimension. Maybe it's something different in the fourth dimension that helps you lead on to that fifth dimension.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth, to where basically, and then you could argue, now if I believe the argument is that you can only go up to 10 dimensions, right? 10
Well,
dimensions is like everything.
Again, it's like that also becomes like, it's even difficult to explain going into a fifth dimension where time is now not even what we're traveling by, that it's not just a moving point, that it's like that time exists as one of the sides as something bigger.
Well, just to jump up, like if you were to go to like the 10th dimension, 10th dimension is basically supposed to be like every possibility of everything that could happen and infinite possibilities, right?
But then again, I think you get to that a little bit sooner than 10.
You think so?
I think so, because it's like if you look at time as 4,
Uh-huh.
and then if you jump to 5 would be, I don't know, to where, So if you look at, because it's like you kind of have to backpedal. It's like, okay, so what is 1 dimension to 2 dimension to 3 dimension? 3 dimension is multiple 2 dimensional shapes, right? Existing in a
Right.
combination. So then the 5th dimension would have to be multiple lines of time existing together.
Yes and no. Okay, so I'm gonna try to explain the dimensions as far as I can from my current
Because
knowledge.
it is, and
right?
it's like I think it probably goes beyond 10. It's just beyond human comprehension.
Yes and no. Okay, hold on. Let me try to let me try to explain the dimensions to the best of my knowledge. Okay.
Go ahead, man.
So,
Go ahead.
all right. So, let's start with third dimension, right? Third dimension is a very linear dimension, right? We experience time as in there is a starting point and there is an ending point. You cannot go back and visit future points or past points. You stay on a linear line, correct? Okay. So fourth dimension now. Fourth dimension is there is a line and you can travel anywhere that you want on that line, but only on that line.
Okay, so I see where you're saying.
Okay.
So then
Fifth
5
dimension is now there's multiple possibilities.
Right. So now time isn't the line. Basically the multiverse theory is the line.
Yes.
So now there are multiple universes, but you can only travel to them. You don't see them as a whole. You only see them as what they are, which are points right now.
Yes.
So 5 is multi. What did I just say?
Multi-dimensional?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Multiverse.
Multiverse
Theory. Multiverse theory, which is parallel universes. So then that means 5 is parallel universes, but those parallel universes are just points.
Yes.
And you can just travel between them, but still you're still held by what you were held by in the 4th dimension.
Yes. So then when you get to something like the 6th dimension, which is something very few people have tried to even comprehend.
I think 6 is where you... Okay, so maybe you don't have the complete view of every multiple universe, of every possible universe and every possible outcome, so you don't see the full tree and every branch and where every branch leads at 6.
Right.
But it's like, I feel like you're really close at 6.
Well, the only reason why I'm close is because I've watched a lot of YouTube videos that have described all of the dimensions to me, and currently I'm having just a hard time remembering them. But basically,
I understand.
But basically the general consensus is that there is 10, right?
Okay.
And then once you get to 10 is every single possibility in every single way, infinite possibilities,
so you see,
infinite time.
You see the tree.
It's God.
It's God. Yeah,
it's God.
You see the tree, which is every branch is a possible universe in it's basically the tree of life.
Yes. And but going back on the original point, and a good place to just kind of wrap up here, is I think that we humans, and what I think that God ultimately is, right, is going back to what Neil deGrasse Tyson has said, right? We are made of star stuff.
Yes.
And energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Matter is finite. So all that stuff does is redistributes throughout the dimensions. So if you look at God as just the singularity point of everything coming together, everything, I'm going to downgrade this to try to explain it on a more fathomable scale, right?
Right, yeah.
A theory that I have in regards to our own dimension, the third dimension, and how it was created compared to the 4th dimension is black holes.
Oh, so like using black holes as like wormholes?
No.
Okay.
So I believe, so what's a 4th dimensional cube, right? It's a tesseract, right? And if you see a picture of a tesseract or a gif of a tesseract, it's a cube that's constantly moving in and out of itself,
fluctuating.
Right? Yes. So now how would you describe a 4th dimensional sphere? the best way to depict it in a third dimensional space would be like a donut looking thing, right? Okay. So I believe, this is just my own personal theory, I believe that black holes are this opening into a fourth dimension.
Okay, so the black hole itself is the door.
Yes. So, but I believe that all the black holes in existence in our third dimensional universe all lead to one point, regardless of where they are, regardless of where they're located. So every time they're sucking in something, it's all going to one single point, right?
I can see that.
Okay, so now follow me here. So we know, a theory that we know is that at one point, all of these black holes are going to come together, they're going to collide, and they're going to suck in everything from the universe, correct? Mm-hmm. So now here's what happens. What is a black hole? A black hole is nothingness. It's blackness as far as we currently know, correct? So now let's go trillions and trillions and trillions of years in the future, and there's one star left. There is a super duper fucking omega black hole that exists, that is a culmination of all the black holes that have collided with each other at this point. And there is one star left in the third dimensional universe. And that black hole finally gets to a point to where it sucks in that star. So now all the matter and all the energy from that star are now brought into this one single point that everything else in our third dimensional universe has also been brought into. Mm-hmm. Well, now what has to happen? It's too much. Now it's the threshold. So what does it have to do? It has to expand.
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
No,
the Big Bang.
I have thought about that. It's a repeating cycle.
Right. So, that's how you get the Big Bang. It's this fourth dimension.
And it's because it all becomes that way, too. It's the explanation of, okay, well, Big Bang, but what came before the Big Bang?
Exactly.
And that's what we look at. It's like, oh, well, the Big Bang happened, everything expanded. Well, the inverse of that, to go backwards, would mean before it exploded, it was all coming together.
Yes. So going back on my point of like the 10th dimension is, and a lot of people who are religious believe this, and what I believe is we are God, God is us. So the 10th dimension, all it is the culmination of everything. So everything that could possibly exist in any of the dimensions, any bit of energy that could exist in any of the multiverses. It's just all of it coming together to a point, and that point expands, and that is God.
So then the idea is, even though we're expanding, at some point we're all going to be getting sucked back in by a gigantic black hole. And we'll all eventually...
Well, whatever the equivalent of a black hole is for a 10th dimension, right. Yeah.
But so eventually all matter will come back together. So it's like, is that basically all of us eventually end up coming back to, we're all just pieces of God, and we all come back together and form God, but God's existence in itself should not exist. So therefore it blows up in a Big Bang and separates itself until its eventual recombination in an endless cycle.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
and on that note, I'm going to leave it at that.
I think so.
But that is what I believe. I think, there'll be more podcasts where I maybe expand on that a little more.
Oh, absolutely. But I would love to be a part of it.
I do believe that we are all, like, if there is a God, we are all God. God is us. And we are the culmination. We are what happens when God separates itself.
It is
that is what you get.
A wonderful theory, Adam.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Unfortunately, we probably won't still be around to prove your theory.
Well, we will, though, because that's the thing.
Oh, us. Yes.
Yeah. Well, not the version of us that we know currently.
Not Adam and Kyle, but whatever our next lives are.
Yes. So, anyways.
I think
I think an hour and a half is a long enough podcast.
It's a good time to cut it.
So thank you guys so much for listening tonight.
Seriously, if you made it all the way to the end of this, pat yourself on the back.
We started with kids,
yes.
And then Actually, it was actually a good transition.
Yeah, it was
kids,
a good
and then the
transition.
creation of the universe.
And you know what? I also want to find out who made it to the end. So if you did make it to the end, I want to see you comment Toffee.
Toffee?
Toffee.
Okay.
Then we'll know who made it through the entire hour and a half.
If you made it to the end of the Kyle and Adam podcast, comment Toffee down below in the comments.
And we'll know. We'll give you a wink.
We'll give you a wink.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening tonight. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms. Remember, we do have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/heartily-millennial. If you enjoyed this conversation, let us know. We'll be more than happy to deliver more of that to you. And any final thoughts, Kyle?
You know what? Life is a very strange, ambiguous thing. So you know what you should do with it? Enjoy it.
Enjoy the fuck out of it,
Enjoy
guys.
the fuck out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
What else you got to do? What else you got to do with your time in your life?
Go to work, pay off student debts, but
Yeah.
whatever.
But after that, enjoy yourself.
Enjoy yourself, guys. All right. I have to pee. Thank you for listening.
Thank
I love
you so much for listening.
Have a good night, you guys.
Good night, everybody.
Or whenever you listen. This is bye.
I'm sorry. Bye.